we're sweeping everything. And we actually did great in Georgia. You look at those races, all the congressmen and congress people, we swept everything. So a couple of little problems we had with a lot of people voting. And you have to be very, very careful with that. Our voting systems are really bad. Don't let the Democrats do what they did in another state last week. Don't let them do it because the Democrats get in. By the way, Lieutenant Governor of Georgia, we just had a great primary victory today. A nicely endorsed candidate. You know that, right? Burt Jones and Herschel Walker. Right?
Herschel Walker. Anyways, there's Donald Trump. He's in Wyoming. He was at a rally. Of course, he's there to push back against Liz Cheney because he's upset about her participation in the January 6th committee and also her telling a little bit of truth every once in a while. So therefore, he's mad about that. But while in Wyoming, he still couldn't stop talking about Georgia, and they're sweeping across the nation because that's how propaganda works. Just say it no matter what the reality is. Because what happened in Georgia was his big candidate, David Perdue, lost the gubernatorial primary to Brian Kemp. Also, his candidate against Raffensperger lost as well. Also, the 10th congressional seat, I was talking about Vernon Jones a lot. He pushed Vernon Jones out of the gubernatorial race so that David Perdue could have an easier chance to get a shot at Brian Kemp. And then push Vernon Jones to the congressional race, which he also lost as well. Sounds like a good sweep he's got going. But he did mention Herschel Walker, which we're gonna get to. But once he mentioned Herschel Walker, it's weird, Herschel Walker kind of doesn't want him mentioning him anymore. This is just off of the side. Let's watch what Herschel Walker said.
President Trump never came out as Herschel, will you run for that Senate seat? Herschel run for this? He never asked, so I'm mad at him because he never asked, but he's taking credit that he asked. Before all this started coming about, my wife and I went with Pastor Tony Evans at Oak Cliff Bible Fellowship, and we went into prayer. We went into prayer and I prayed about it. And to be honest with you, I was praying that God would bring somebody else.
Herschel, everyone was praying that God would bring someone else, but you showed up anyway because you weren't talking to God. Anyways, that's a side note. Let's go back to this trouncing that his people took that he didn't want to talk about, because on this August 16th primary, again, he's in Wyoming. And Wyoming is shaping up as the next big test for Trump's effort to unseat Republican elected officials who've been critical of him and who fought his falsehood-ridden attempts to overturn the results of the 2020 election. His crusade was dealt this major blow in Georgia, where primary voters overwhelmingly renominated Brian Kemp as Secretary of State and Brad Raffensperger over candidates the former president vigorously supported. Now here are some of those numbers. Kemp won 73.7% of the vote, while Perdue only won 21.8%. Raffensperger had a tighter race. He won 52.3% to Jody Hice's 33.4%. It was tighter, but it was still a blowout. Let's keep it real. So we're going through all this. He figured out that his candidates aren't working, so he has to lie about it in front of folks in Wyoming because maybe they don't pay attention, he thinks. But in response to that, though, the Save America PAC, Trump's whole thing, sent out this flyer in his email, and it was then also picked up and posted on Twitter. But the heading of this email they sent says, "In case you missed it, something stinks in Georgia." I think you guys might be able to see where this is going and what he's talking about, because Meredith McGraw did point out on the top of this tweet here that the analysis in this story boils down to, on primary day in Georgia, Kemp gets 74% and Perdue gets 22%. Nobody in any election in America gets 74% of the votes ever. It doesn't happen. Obvious fraud. Or they're backed by Donald Trump and the people there realize they want nothing to do with him. It can be different in every race because look, Herschel Walker won by a lot too, right? Let's go for more details. So there's an email that was sent out Tuesday by the Save America PAC, and it links to this article that was written by Emerald Robinson. She's a former OANN and Newsmax correspondent, and as I point out, it's called "Something Stinks in Georgia." And they talked about how much these numbers are so bad. We already read through that, but there was the curious part about Herschel Walker and how no one runs away with races anymore. The former president chose not to sow any doubt on Herschel Walker, his controversial Senate pick, who easily advanced the general election with more than 68% of the vote, and by a larger margin than Kemp did over Perdue. It's almost like when it happens against him, it's unreal. When it happens for him, it's totally normal because, again, he's a con man. As this all went out, I want to get to just what Mike Lindell said, because once Trump starts saying things, Mike Lindell says, "Where is the ass that I can kiss?" Here he is kissing it.
I don't know how my fellow Georgians were able to consciously reelect Brad Raffensperger. What do you think?
It was stolen. There were algorithms used in Georgia, but we caught them. We were watching. Everybody was watching this time. Again, there was, against Raffensperger, what's it, Jody Heiss. The algorithm went through Georgia, and I don't know how many counties out of 159, I think it's like 100 and some, the same percentage of votes, like 17%. It happened to Witt too. All they did in Georgia, just dialed up. It's called a selection, not an election. We don't have elections anymore. We have selections. Hence the name of the movie, Selection Code. SelectionCode.com. Everything in Georgia was stolen, and they did that for two reasons. One is they wanted to push it in our real president's face and go, "Oh, your endorsements don't mean anything." You know what? You made it so obvious. You think crooked Brian Kemp got 73% or whatever? Impossible. Brad Raffensperger is the biggest criminal in the country. Brad Raffensperger is why we need to melt them down and get behind prison bars. Brad gets 51%. No, he didn't. He stole that election.
Your thoughts was?
It's just the incoherence of all of this is kind of funny. And I think it speaks to how not completely stupid the Republican electorate is out in the country at large, right? And Donald Trump, this like, what the problem for him is him playing the stop the steal card. I don't think it's very smart to do it within Republican primaries. There's just like, and there's going to be a resistance and unwillingness to believe that Republicans or like who's doing the stealing now? Like are Democrats doing on behalf of Republicans? And of course, as you just so astutely pointed out, Jayar, this only ever happens to apply to candidates that Trump didn't endorse. Like it's just one of these weird things, and the incoherence is hilarious. But I always thought that the stop the steal stuff was a fringe sort of belief amongst the base. It wasn't something that was very mainstream anyway.
Well, he figures anything he says they'll listen to, and the reason he figures that is because it's true, because he's proven that out. He's collected this group of people, large group, you could say, that no matter what he says or does, his word is the gospel. Which I want to go down to this last thought, you guys, because although Brian Kemp, who won that by a lot, he's still trying to mend some fences with the Trump folks, but he's probably trying to keep him from saying things like this because this is how he approaches everything that goes against him. He will burn the whole place down. Remember this from last year.
Stacey Abrams, who still has not conceded, and that's okay. Stacey, would you like to take his place? It's okay with me. Having her, I think, might be better than having your existing governor, if you want to know the truth. Might very well be better.
That's what Donald Trump's approach is going to be in this race. Republicans in Georgia are right now upset, scared, and angry. They don't know which version of this guy is going to show up because they know he's upset about getting trounced, or at least his candidates getting trounced, and how that has an effect on him.